Hi everyone, welcome to my first ever YouTube video. I am so excited to bring you the tutorial for this gorgeous slouchy bag. It actually comes in two sizes. We have the small, which really isn't that small, and then we also have the large one. This is a really great beginner-friendly sewing pattern, and it's so customizable. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. So without further ado, here's the tutorial. Start by printing and assembling your sewing pattern. Both of the sizes have the same sewing instructions, and this is the layout for how to piece it together. There are several different pattern markings, so make sure that you transfer all of those. The pocket placement and magnetic clasp closure notch only go on the lining. The pocket placement is indicated by the stars on the pattern. I'm just using my awls so I can make a hole and then mark that on the pattern later. Then go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces from your lining and your main fabric. If you want to have two pockets on the inside of your bag, then go ahead and cut twice the amount of fabric indicated on the pocket piece. To strengthen the area behind the magnetic clasp closure, I'm just cutting out two pieces of fusible interfacing. The exact size doesn't really matter. I'm just making some 3" by 3" pieces, roughly. Continue cutting out the remaining pieces, making sure to transfer all pattern markings onto your fabric. If you're working with a thicker fabric like leather, you may want to trace out the pattern instead of cutting on the fold to ensure the most accuracy. We'll start by applying our fusible, so I have one of my pocket pieces and the matching fusible, and I'm pressing that in with my iron. We'll then apply our square pieces of fusible to the magnetic clasp area. Apply the fusible to the wrong side of the fabric. It should be the same side that you marked the darts on. Then sew your darts. There are a total of 8 darts, 2 on each piece, 4 pieces total. Once all the darts are sewn in, press them towards the bottom of the bag. Now we're going to sew the pocket pieces right sides together at 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're going to leave a gap so that we can turn the pocket inside out. Trim the extra seam allowance at the corners so that we can have nice sharp corners on our pocket. Then turn the pocket inside out and push out the corners as best as possible. If you have a point turner, now would be a great time to use it. Now we're going to give the pocket a really good press. Try to make sure that the fabric at the opening stays flush with each other and doesn't go all wonky. Place the pocket onto the lining piece, making sure to align it with the marks that we transferred from the pattern. Make sure that the side with the opening is pointing towards the bottom of the bag, because when we sew it onto the bag, that is what will close that opening. Then take it to your machine and sew along the sides and the bottom of the pocket using an edge stitch. Now we're going to attach the magnetic clasp to both sides of the line. If you have different clasps than I do, then go ahead and follow the manufacturer's instructions, but this is how mine are installed. I made a very small snip into the fabric just above and below the magnetic clasp notch. I put the prongs of the clasp through those holes and then put the washer, and then I'm folding the prongs closed. Repeat on both sides. Now place the lining pieces right sides together and pin along the outer edge. We're going to sew the lining right sides together at 1/2 inch seam allowance, leaving about a 5-inch gap in the area between the darts. Now press this seam open. This is really important for the lining to stay flush with the bag. We're going to repeat these same exact steps on the main pieces, so sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. The only difference is that we're not going to leave a gap, so sew around the entire outer perimeter of the main pieces. I didn't record this part, but once you're done with this seam, make sure that you press it open as well. Now with our lining, we're going to turn it inside out and place it inside of the main bag so that the right sides are facing each other. On one side of the bag opening, we're going to leave about a 2-inch gap at the beginning and end of the seam. This is so that we can close the handle later on. Match your notches and then pin everything in place. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't forget that we're leaving a gap at the beginning and the end of this seam. On the other side of the bag opening, we're going to sew along the entirety of it, so we're not going to leave a gap, and we're going to sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now trim down the seam allowances on both sides of the bag opening to about half of what it is, so that's a 1/4 inch. Make sure not to cut where we left that gap, so only cut where there is a seam. Now it's time to flip our bag inside out through the opening that we left in the lining. Now we're going to attach the handle, so match all of the fabric right sides together so the lining should match each other and the main should match each other. Try to get all of your seams aligned nicely as well. Once that's all pinned or clipped into place, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew at 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you can, press that seam open. If you can't, like me with this leather, then no sweat. Next, you're gonna press the seam allowances at the opening inside of the bag. And then we're gonna sew around the entire bag opening both sides with an edge stitch, which is 1/16 of an inch. This is what's gonna close the opening at the handle, so make sure that both of the fabrics are aligned really nicely. And then repeat on the other side of the bag opening. To finish the lining, we're going to fold and press the fabric towards the center seam on the inside of the bag, like so. And then we're going to sew this down from the outside of the bag, and we want to stitch in the ditch, so we're going to sew directly into the seam. Now for the final step, we're going to close the opening in the lining. You can do a hand sewn ladder stitch like I'm doing here, or you can finish it by doing an edge stitch on your sewing machine. Whichever way you choose to close the lining, once you're done, put it into the bag and then you are all done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tag me in your creations. I would love to see what you come up with.